Weasel Walter playing a show tomorrow at Al Dubliner, or today possibly the Sunday. Sunday, December 18th.
Can't wait. Hi. Everything she said is true, I swear.
Some people know him as the metal dude. Some people know him as the jazz dude. Others yet know him as the no-wave dude, etc., etc. Many different sides. So let's explore these different sides. Just telling us a little bit about how these bands started and where they're at today, maybe. Let's start with Retrovirus, Lydia Lunch, and you.
I'm going to explore this a little bit. When I was a kid, I was isolated and I was sort of a music geek, and I used to look up bands and books and stuff like that. And I went to the mall one day when I was in 7th grade, and there was a book published by Omnibus Press called Women in Rock or something like that, or it was something like that. But I looked through it and it had all these kind of new wave artists in it, like Lena Lovitch and Nina Hagen and all this kind of stuff. And I turned to this one page, and there's somebody named Lydia Lunch there, and she had a tarantula on her tit. And I was just like, huh? And I didn't like spiders, but so there was sort of like a little interest and fear combined sort of crystallized moment thing. And I read it, and it compared her band Teenage Jesus and the Jerks to a Chilean torture chamber. And I thought that sounded really cool, so I kind of like kept it in the back of my mind and, did my research and found her records. And
how did the band start?
Well, there came a point many years later when a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey man, Lydia Lunch needs a guitar player." And I was like, I got this. So I got a hold of her. I had met her in person a few years prior at a gig where my band opened, and I'd been on her radar a little bit because I was kind of
Flying Lindbakkers?
No, Burmese. I've been in 8 million bands. I have one for each letter of the alphabet, by the way. I recently found out.
Really?
But, yeah, I do. Yeah.
That's cool.
At least one for each letter of the alphabet. But anyways, I was on her radar because I'm kind of a buff of the no-wave scene that she was part of in the 70s, and I guess I'm seen as like one of the go-to people for information on that. But so I was on her radar, and I said, she had seen me play drums in Burmese, and she was impressed. She was like, great, cool, awesome. In a weird way, Burmese is kind of an extension of Teenage Jesus and the Jerks with Swans and grindcore and all these other influences, so she could get it. So I called her up and I said, "Lydia, I heard you need a guitar player." And she's like, "Well, yeah, I'm trying out so-and-so and so-and-so." Turned out nobody wanted to do it for whatever reason. And she was considering someone else first, and I was like, "Well, why don't you watch a video of me playing with my band Cellular Chaos?" And she watched it and called me back. She's like, "All right, fine, you're in." Like,
nice.
Great, So if you'd asked the 14-year-old me if I thought I would ever be playing in Lydia Lunch's band, he would have said yes. Nobody else would have maybe thought so, but I just, certain things I pursued. So anyways, the band was originally started as a one-off for a gallery show she had in LA in 2012, and it was supposed to be sort of a retrospective of her music work, because her music thing hadn't, by like the late 80s, she was focusing more on other idioms like spoken word and a lot of other things. So I guess people weren't really associating her so much with having a hot band, but we put together a real hot rock and roll band, and here we are 10 years later. We've rampaged all over the globe and played hundreds of shows, and it's still fresh, and I don't know, Lydia's a legend, and it was great for me to be in the position to help her put together a great band, and I don't know, we kick ass. So.
I saw an old video of you playing drums and bass at the same time while she's singing and playing guitar. What's up with that?
Just another one of our diversions. I mean, we toured in different incarnations. We had a duo for a long time called Brutal Measures, which was
you don't have to tell me. We Crass Lips booked you guys here the last time you played here in 2016, split lip service. It was awesome.
Well, who's watching this?
People, this is gonna be on Crass Lips, and people talk about it all the time.
Oh,
they still do. They're like, "Oh man, that show when you brought those two."
Part of being me is you don't get a lot of feedback, so you don't know who knows what or if anyone knows anything. So I tend to over-explain just out of not being cryptic. Because when I see people do interviews, they kind of act like everybody knows already, and people don't know, and I don't know why anyone would watch it. But anyways, so we've had a lot of different formats, me and Lydia. And at one point, she was asked to be part of like a no-wave panel or something in Paris at the University of Chicago, and I said, well, why don't we do Teenage Jesus and the Jerks? And she's like, well, I don't know, like 3 plane tickets. I was like, who cares? I'll play drums and bass at the same time. And she was like, So yeah, I learned how to play all the Teenage Jesus stuff on drums and bass at the same time. But eventually we wound up doing we did that a couple of times, and then we did the final Teenage Jesus and the Jerks show 2016 or something like that, and I got Tim Dahl to play drums. He normally plays bass in Retrovirus, of course, and I thought he's a perfect drummer for Teenage Jesus and the Jerks because he doesn't play drums, but he can count, and that's the only time he's ever been paid to play drums, and it was perfect. It was just so Teenage Jesus and the Jerks went out on a high point. There was no talking between songs, just rat-tat-tat, like one after the other, brutality, 20 minutes, done, end of the band for good, and that was it. So Teenage Jesus and the Jerks is my favorite rock band of all time, so to play in that is kind of some kind of full circle for me, you know, and I'd love to do it again, but it's just not in the cards, so whatever. At least I was in the last incarnation.
It was really cool. I recommend that video. Weasel playing drums and bass. Very cool and gracious of you to do that. 2 instruments at the same time in this legendary band. And Lydia's killing it all these years later. It's really cool. Now I want to know about Lake of Dracula. How did that band start?
Mm. Lake of Dracula started in 1995, I think, and basically there was a pretty good scene in Chicago at that point of weird bands, and I called it Chicago No Wave, which was a point of consternation for some people because some people thought it was a retro thing and blah blah blah. There's a bunch of controversy about me calling it Chicago No Wave, but I saw some parallels to the New York thing. Part of it was the cheap rent at the time, so we had a good scene, and a friend of ours. There was sort of a scene that was going on at the same time in around Ann Arbor and Detroit, and we sort of cross-fertilized with that scene a little bit and did shows with those people. But one of the people from that scene, Jim Magus, decided he was going to move to Chicago because he wanted more action. So, of course, immediately I was like, "Well, Jim, we need to start a band," and he's like, "Sure." So, by the way, he's the guy who told me that Lydia needed a guitar player. So, anyways, another full circle. That was many decades later. But, we thought, well, who do we want in this band? And we both immediately thought of Heather Mellowick from Scissor Girls because she was a great drummer and a great stylist, and we just thought this would work perfectly. So we asked her if she wanted to do it. She said, yeah. We got together. We wrote songs very quickly, easily, immediately.
Did you do something in Scissor Girls?
I was a fan, and I used to, be around them all the time. And I did one gig where I sat in for Heather playing their old songs from their early, 7 inches and stuff like that. And it was great. It was awesome. I have a recording of it. Cool. My archives are pretty deep. But yeah, I loved the Scissor Girls back in the day. I thought particularly their 7 inches were really masterpieces, and I thought they were a great band. But anyways, Heather was a great drummer, and we put the band together, wrote songs. Eventually Al Johnson from US Maple kind of glommed onto it. That was controversial. I thought it was hilarious. Jim didn't think it was so great. Whatever. Jury's still out on that. But I don't know. We had a short lifespan. I guess we were around a couple of years. We did one tour of the West Coast for some reason. I don't know why. Back then, touring was like a question mark. Like, how do we even do this? It wasn't really that easy. Kind of pre-internet-ish, or the dawn of the internet, at least. So, I don't know. We made one album and a 7-inch, and that was kind of it. We moved on.org. Actually, Heather moved on, and without her, the chemistry wasn't there. We couldn't keep it going, so.
I love that band.
Yeah, thanks.
Xbxrx.
Oh boy. Well, Xbxrx is a band from Mobile, Alabama that was formed by a bunch of kids, and they were explosive, amazing. When I first saw them, I probably saw them in 2001 or something. I don't know, hard to say, maybe late 90s. And they played their set was maybe 6 minutes long, and it was just like a nuclear bomb of energy, and I admired them. I thought they were great. And at one point, I was moving out. I left Chicago and I moved to the West Coast. I moved to Oakland, California. And it turned out that they were moving about the same time. And I said, hey, they weren't doing Xbxrx at that point. I was like, hey guys, can play drums in Xbxrx. And they're like, yeah, of course. So I was in Xbxrx for 7 years. And
wow. We
kept up, I almost think of Xbxrx as kind of like a queer hardcore band, like a queer Black Flag or something that's like going out there and just kind of doing like Bizarro World Macho, like it's a parody of macho hardcore, but it was like a response to it or something like that. So we were a pretty cryptic band. We didn't really talk about who was in the band, so most people don't know I was in it for 7 years. And 3 albums and a bunch of 7-inches and stuff like that. But we toured our asses off, and it was crazy, and it was kind of like being in Black Flag. It was kind of like, after a while, I was 10 years older than everybody else in the band at the end, and it just seemed really weird to be 35 years old and looking around and everyone around me is like 19, 20. It just seemed a little creepy, so I thought it was time to retire, amongst other things. But I had a good run in that band, and it was really great, and it was like being in war, but it was a good war to fight, I guess.
Next, Flying Lindenbachers.
I started a band when I was 19 with a 65-year-old man, and he quit after a while, and I kept going for 30 years. And basically it's a cross between everything unlistenable that I like, which is no wave, punk, hardcore, death metal, free jazz, noise, modern classical music. I call it irritainment.
Cellular Chaos.
I kept trying to have a rock band where I would play guitar in it, and it was not that easy to do. And when I moved to New York, I put one together, and I tried really hard to find a singer, and everyone was really stupid or underqualified or delusional and not talented. But I got a lot of answers in ads, and finally I got the perfect vocalist and front person and co-songwriter and genius artist, Admiral Gray, to be in the band. She answered, like, I was exasperated on Facebook. I said, Jesus Christ, can't somebody sing in Cellular Chaos? Like, is this band not, like, interesting? And she kind of wrote and was like, okay, dude, like, whatever. And she basically came to rehearsal, and like, we were both like, you, like, you know, recognized. And that was sort of the beginning of the real band with the 4-piece band, which is still kind of happening today.
Damn.
And it's crazy. I think it's kind of a cross between punk, glam, and no wave or something like that. It's real fun. It's kind of like a rock band on DMT or something.
Totally. You're just gonna diss the other bassist girl like that? Like, that shit's pretty awesome.
Oh.
I put a clip of her too.
Oh, I mean, no, I don't know. It's not diss. I mean, it's just like I wanted it to be a rock band with a singer, and it wasn't until then.
True.
I mean, Cece's very talented. I mean, Cece Moss, the original bass player of Cellular Chaos was Cece Moss, and she was just like, when I moved to New York, I was just like, who's around, who's cool, and I didn't really care. You know, I was just like, hey, Cece, you still play bass? Because I knew her on the West Coast. And I knew she was kind of like in noise bands and stuff like that. And I just liked her. I thought she was cool and she had good energy. And she was like, yeah. And she wasn't really a trained bass player, but she innately understood things, which was more important to me even getting somebody who like plays the bass like excellently or whatever. That's always, the idea is always more important than the technique. A good idea will always trump technique just in itself. I mean, technique and ideas is great, but most people don't have both. So, you know, either a lot of people that can play an instrument well just kind of don't really have very good ideas in my experience. So I would always rather work with people who have better ideas and maybe don't have, you know, technical excellence per se. But Cece Moss was just an example of somebody who was like, yeah, I'll be in your fucking band. Like, and she just came in and she had a lot of great ideas, and early in the band, she was a big part of it. I mean, it was really democratic at first. I also had a 65-year-old drummer that used to play with Cecil Taylor, so it was real diverse band.
Why did she leave?
Why did she leave? She had kind of like, we wanted to start touring, and she couldn't really reconcile how the time and the money and all that kind of crap, because she had to like have a job and stuff like that. So, I mean, part of the problem, that's always part of the problem with having these bands, is trying to find people who intersect in how far they want to take it before it collapses. because everything always fails, which is why I always did a million things, because everything always fails. But if I didn't think it was worth trying, I wouldn't have bothered. But sometimes you get in a band and people aren't on the same page about how much of their energy they want to drain, time, energy, money, all that kind of stuff. So whatever. She left. I mean, we agreed that it was probably time to switch it up, and we got other bass players and went on tour and killed ourselves.
And now you're back.
And now we're back. Well, we've been back for a while. The band lives in 2 different states, so it's not really easy to do it regularly, but it's a thing, sure.
Vomitatrix.
Vomitatrix is a free grindcore band that got started this year. I feel like Tim Dahl, who plays bass in Retrovirus and was in Flying Lutenbachers for a while, wanted to do a tour with myself, Gina Bootleg, and Rick I, and he realized very quickly that instead of doing 4 solo sets, we should probably just make a band. So basically it's like 4 solo sets at the same time.
Was it kind of squished together for set time purposes, or?
No, I think it was more like, why the hell aren't we just all going to play together? And I'm joking. I'm saying basically it's like 4 solo sets at the same time, but it's not. It quickly became a sort of somewhat structured band. It's chaotic. I guess all my bands are like a fractured, bizarro world piss take on some kind of pre-existing form. Like I said, Cellular Chaos is like a rock band on DMT. Vomitatrix is kind of like a grindcore band on psychedelics or something. Yeah, it's like through everything I do is fractured through a mirror of unreality, like a bizarro world interpretation of things, because I relate to these sort of like classic forms of like a rock band or whatever, but there's no reason to do it in the traditional way that it's been done a million trillion times. And I also think there's a lot of levels to, I try to instill what I do with a lot of meta text and a lot of different ways of perspective. Like there's visual things, there's jokes, there's like references, there's original parts, there's all everything. Like I try to make artwork that works on a bunch of different levels, and whatever people get out of it is up to them. Like they may not see all the levels of it, but it's fine, because some of it's like really deeply in jokes and coded things that no one would get, and they don't need to get. I don't know, I just think that's the point of art, is to make it as rich and have as much depth as possible. And that's why I have a big body of work, because I couldn't really be restricted to like one band or one project or something like that. I'm still trying to make more bands. If anyone out there wants to make a band,
you're in too many bands. Stop.
I'm not in enough bands.
Oh no, been in on 200 albums, something like that.
Probably closer to like 230.
Closer to 230, and a bunch of just like a part of a bunch of other projects that you didn't really start. Some of my favorites are, well, definitely recommend the Unreality version of your like these pop songs and his covers album. My favorite thing to listen to when I'm down. Really recommend Fuck the Entire World, right?
Yeah. Fuck the... I don't remember what it's called. Something like that.
It was like, seriously, Fuck the Entire World.
Roxanne! You don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night.
Human race. I don't know. Something like that. It's my Harry Karaoke album.
Harry Karaoke album. And, of course, like, all his solo stuff. I'm not going to preview that. You got to go to the show to see it. All right?
What's he going to do?
Nobody knows. Okay, some of my other favorite bands you've been in. To Live and Shave in LA, obviously. Really recommend. I think my favorite is To Live and Shave in LA too. Just like the most insane shit. Okay, like
there's a story behind that.
If anybody's just like watching this, like, oh, like I thought Crass Lips like only cared about queer POC like feminist like bands. Yes, for the most part. Don't be like sending in your little fucking shitty noise demos thinking just because you're a white guy, like you fucking listen to Live and Shave in LA too, and then we could talk. Okay. But
yes, please listen to that.
And Cocky SP,
yeah,
which I don't know what you did in that, and also something to do with Eraserata.
Sure.
Tell me about those.
I mean, Eraserata is another great band that I used to glom onto because they were so great. I used to follow them around. But when I first moved to the West Coast, I had a welcoming committee there. I hated Chicago around the early 2000s. I hated Chicago, and I hated everything about it. I was so tired of everything about it. And basically, I went on tour looking for a place to live. And when I went to the Bay Area, there was always this insane reception. And it just... there were a lot of great bands there at that point. There was a lot of energy. It was kind of cheap to live there at the time. And at one point, I went out after one of the gigs on this bar crawl where we just went down the Mission in San Francisco. We were so obnoxious, we kept getting kicked out of bars, and it went on all night. And finally, at the end of the night, John Dwyer puts his arm around me and goes, "So, hey, buddy, you moving here?" I was like, "Fuck yes, I am." So I wrapped up my business in Chicago, moved out to the West Coast, and I immediately moved into a loft with Jenny, the singer from Eraserata, and the guys from Xbxrx, and Mike Green from Burmese. So it was like a little collective of weird musicians. And one of my first gigs was Eraserata invited me to be their second drummer on a weekend tour. So I learned their whole set, and me and Bianca played simultaneous, like kind of interlocking drums. I think I have recordings of this, but it was so awesome. There was such a great band, and they had great songs, and they were so open. Like their approach was so open. They were just like, come play drums with us on tour, and I was like, great. It was great. It was fabulous. We put it together really quick. It was, I don't know, there might be one clip on YouTube or something like that, but yeah, it was great. I don't know.
Okay. I think that's probably all we have time for today, kids. Much more to learn. Just go down the Weasel hole on YouTube.
WeaselWalter.com.
WeaselWalter.com.
WeaselWalterBandcamp.com. UGExplode.com.
UGExplode.
Google.biz.
We love to see that UGG explode.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot. So
somebody write a book about me. I'll help you. I don't have the time to do it.
There you go.
Don't wait till I die.
Don't wait till he fucking dies. Appreciate the shit now.
Yeah, appreciate anything that's good now, please.
Seriously, and a lot of it comes from around this guy, so that's a good place to start.
I try.
Tries. Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
How long? I didn't hear the sound.
Got technical problems. You could always keep the audio though and just run random shit over it. Go with surreal on it.
I have a bunch of fucking clips, and this is gonna be long as it is.
Yeah, just cut it up, make it crazy.